It was Tuesday. Not the kind of day that stands out, not the kind you remember. Just the usual clatter of shoes in the hallway, the low hum of a dryer, the stale office coffee she always complained about. I came home earlier than usual, rainwater still dripping from my collar, my key sticking slightly in the door the way it always did when it was damp. Inside, the air smelled like citrus, lemon, to be exact, which was strange. Not because it was unusual for her to clean, but because she never used lemon-scented anything. She hated it. Said it reminded her of public bathrooms. That alone didn't mean anything. People change. Preferences shift. Maybe the store was out of lavender. But it lingered, sharp and artificial, buried in the walls like something trying to cover something else. I took off my coat, let it hang there dripping. Didn't even bother with the shoes. I was halfway down the hall when I noticed it. On the bookshelf. That damned, perfectly curated shelf she'd spent weeks obsessing over during lockdown. Color-coded novels, tiny succulents in ceramic pots, travel photos, our framed ticket stubs from Prague. Everything in a place, balanced with compulsive precision. Except now, wedged between Norwegian wood and the unbearable lightness of being, there was a single cufflink. Silver. Round. Cheap-looking. I don't wear cufflinks. Haven't since our wedding. She got me a pair then, engraved, elegant, a little too shiny. But these weren't mine. I stood there, staring at it. Not touching. Just listening. The house didn't make a sound. No footsteps. No hum of the dishwasher. Just the kind of silence that's full of something. It vibrates, the way your ears ring in the absence of noise. It was angled strangely, too. Not fallen or dropped. It stood upright, tilted slightly toward the left like it had been placed there intentionally, or worse, carelessly. I walked closer, still saying nothing, breathing shallow. The books on either side were slightly parted, like someone had jammed it in and moved on, not even realizing they'd left a breadcrumb. But she would have. She always noticed the little things. Once, I swapped two of the framed photos on the wall just to see how long it'd take her to notice. It didn't make it 10 minutes. But this? This had been here long enough to settle its weight into the shelf. I reached out slowly, fingers brushing the cold metal. The surface was clean. No fingerprints. No scratches. Just polished, like it hadn't been worn at all. Which made less sense. Why was only one here? Why was it off him? Why was it in this room? I didn't pick it up. Didn't want to disturb it. That's the thing no one tells you about suspicion. It's not a fire. It's frost. It doesn't burn. It settles in slow, quiet. You start seeing patterns where there used to be comfort. Your mind stops asking questions. It starts constructing answers. She came in a few minutes later, hair damp from the mist, tote bag on one shoulder, smiling like nothing in the world was wrong. She kissed me absently on the cheek and muttered something about a long day, about needing a shower. I nodded, kept my back to her, eyes locked on the shelf. She didn't notice. She never saw me seeing it. Later that night, I watched her as she curled into bed beside me, reading the same page twice without realizing, humming some tune under her breath. She was comfortable again, relaxed, like someone who thought the past was buried under layers of apologies, date nights, and counseling sessions, like someone who believed forgiveness was real. I looked at her, really looked at her. The slope of her shoulder, the rise and fall of her breath, the comfort of routine that I now knew was a lie. It wasn't the cufflink itself, it was what it meant. The absence of caution, the arrogance of forgetting. She didn't just betray me. She left evidence in plain sight because she thought I'd stopped looking. That's when I decided. No yelling. No confrontation. No tears. Just patience. Just silence. I'd wait. Smile. Rebuild. We talk to the therapist, tell our stories, work through the pain. And when the time came, when the light finally came back into her eyes and she believed the worst was behind us, that's when I'd do it. That's when I'd show her what it means to bury someone with truth. The coffee pot started brewing itself earlier every morning. She'd reset the timer. Said she was trying to own her mornings, some new productivity kick she picked up from a podcast I never heard her mention before. It was a small thing, but it shifted the rhythm of the house. She was up before me now, showered and dressed before I even opened my eyes. I'd come into the kitchen and find her already sipping coffee at the window, fully made up, phone face down beside her, smile too practiced to be natural. She'd say good morning like she'd rehearsed it, like warmth was a line she was delivering. She stopped wearing the ring around the house. It gets in the way when I'm typing, she said. I don't want to scratch the laptop. It made sense if you didn't think about it too hard. But I did. I thought about it constantly. I thought about how it never got in the way before, not through 5 years of Zoom meetings and work-from-home marathons. I thought about how it used to sit snug on her hand while she stirred pasta, folded laundry, held my face when we kissed. Now it lived in a little ceramic dish by the sink, cold and forgotten, like a part of her she was done pretending to miss. She started talking like a stranger. Not rude, never rude, but detached. Every conversation was framed like a motivational quote. I just need to find my center, boundaries are healthy, I'm learning how to be present in my own space. But I wasn't in that space. She spoke in metaphors with no doors, no invitations. Everything about her felt exported. Like she'd downloaded someone else's personality from a blog about healing and decided it would look good on her for a while. She'd always been a little scattered with details, but this was different. She started forgetting things that mattered. My mother's birthday. Our anniversary plans. The way she looked at me when I reminded her, blank, like she was seeing the date for the first time, burned into me deeper than any argument ever could. Not because she didn't care. Because she didn't try to pretend she cared. Not anymore. There was no rush to cover it up, no panic. Just a shrug, a smile, and a half-hearted, I've been so swamped lately. Her phone became another person in the room. She used to leave it lying around, sometimes even forgot where she put it. Now, it never left her side. It went to the bathroom with her. Slept beneath her pillow. That flipped screen down every time I entered the room. She turned off notifications. Started using a second messaging app she claimed was just for work. I never asked. I didn't have to. I could hear the lie echoing in the silence after she said it. But she hugged me. She laughed at my jokes. She said she loved me more than ever, she claimed, while scrolling past my face during dinner. The cruelty wasn't in the coldness. It was in the warmth that didn't belong. She gave just enough to keep the machinery running. Kissed me before bed like punching a time card. Looked at me like someone staring at a house they once loved but knew they'd already sold. Then came the night I almost broke. She was in the shower. Her laptop was open on the couch. Not unusual, she was always working late now, projects and deadlines I'd never seen on her calendar. I don't know what I was expecting when I sat down. Maybe a name, a photo, a message. Something to explain why I no longer recognized the person I slept beside. But the screen was on a spreadsheet, marketing numbers, at Spend, analytics. Nothing damning. But in the corner, in the minimized tray, was a chat bubble with no label. Not Slack. Not email. Something different. I hovered over it, just once. It flickered briefly, a timestamp and a heart emoji. Then I heard the water shut off. I closed the lid without clicking. Just like that. Like I hadn't seen it. Like nothing had happened. She walked out wrapped in a towel, skin flushed from the heat, hair wet, eyes tired. She smiled. Asked if I wanted to watch something. I said yes. But something had changed. Not in the evidence. In me. I didn't trust her voice anymore. I didn't hear words. I measured tones, studied inflections. I watched how she blinked, how her hands moved when she talked. I learned the way she dodged questions without ever lying. She was careful, but not careful enough. Because people who still feel guilt try to hide. She wasn't hiding. She was forgetting I was even looking. We sat on the couch with a movie playing neither of us cared about. She leaned into me like old times, head on my shoulder. I didn't flinch. I let her. I kept my breathing steady. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely, watching her like I was on the other side of glass, like she was a stranger in a house that used to be mine. I didn't know who the message was from. I didn't know what she felt when she looked at me anymore. But I knew one thing with a clarity that burned through bone. She wasn't here. Not really. And neither was I. Not the version of me she thought she'd fooled. Not anymore. It happened on a Thursday. The kind of quiet, forgettable day that makes betrayal more brutal. I'd stayed late at work, deliberately so. I'd made a habit of giving her space. She said it helped her decompress, that she needed evenings alone sometimes to recharge. I never questioned it, not openly. I was past that phase, past the questions and the begging for eye contact. Now I just watched, measured, mapped her behavior like a battlefield, marking every inch she tried to reclaim as hers alone. When I got home, she was already in bed, a book in her hands she clearly hadn't been reading, phone plugged in on her side of the nightstand, face down. She smiled, said she was tired. I told her I understood. My voice was flat. It didn't matter. She'd stopped listening for tone a long time ago. But something in the room was off. Not out of place, too in place. Everything too neat. Too considered. That was the tell. It wasn't in what she left behind. It was in what she wiped clean. Her closet was half empty again, suddenly minimalist. Her shoes were rearranged. The top drawer of her dresser, usually a chaotic mess of makeup, tangled earbuds, and half-used lotion tubes, had been meticulously organized. It struck me like static through bone. She was preparing for something. Moving pieces. Rehearsing. That's when I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Somewhere she never looked. Somewhere I never touched since I shoved the old camera in there 2 years ago, right after our anniversary trip to Asheville. A dusty DSLR I hadn't used since smartphones made it obsolete. Just out of a strange itch, I powered it on. Dead. I plugged it in. Left it charging while she slept. Later, after she turned and curled away from me with that fake softness she'd perfected, I checked the memory card. I didn't expect anything. I'd forgotten it even had one. But it had auto backup enabled. The last few times I brought it out, I'd left it connected to the home network. The screen flickered, clumsy and pixelated, and there they were. Not videos. Audio files. Dozens of them. Pulled from synced voice notes on her phone, some from weeks ago, some from just a few days back. She must have forgotten it was still connected to the cloud. She probably thought she'd deleted everything. But this camera had them. Quiet, careless little confessions. Not explicit. Nothing so direct. Just fragments of her voice, recorded in that soft whisper she used when talking to someone she needed to impress. He's still trying, she laughed in one. I almost feel bad. In another, it's like he doesn't realize I've already left. And then the one that stopped everything. I can't wait to tell him I'm done. Not yet, though. I need to be smart. I want the timing to be poetic. That was the word that cracked it open. Poetic. This wasn't just an affair. This was a performance. A story she was crafting where I was the clueless husband, the stepping stone, the emotional dunce fumbling for her approval while she orchestrated her grand escape. She wasn't just leaving. She was writing her exit like it was art. She wanted a scene, a moment, a narrative where she could stand over the rubble with perfect lighting and call it growth. And that's when it stopped. The hurt, the doubt, the long hours staring at the ceiling wondering if I was imagining things, if I was paranoid or broken or overreacting. No, I was never paranoid. I was too slow. I stared at the screen, her voice still echoing in the tiny speaker like a countdown. Not angry, just clean. I turned it off, slid the camera back into the drawer, walked into the bathroom, shut the door quietly, and stared at myself in the mirror for a long time. Not for answers, just to see who I was now. The moment you realize your marriage is a stage and you're not the co-star, you're the prop, that's when everything sharpens. My chest didn't tighten. My hands didn't shake. The war had started, and I was already behind. But I was catching up fast. I didn't wake her, didn't confront her, didn't even shift the air in the room. That's not what this moment was for. This wasn't the climax. This was the trigger being pulled in slow motion. I went back to bed, slid in beside her, matched her breathing, let my mind unspool, not with grief, but with tactics. She wanted timing. She wanted poetry. I'd give it to her. I'd let her keep walking deeper into the story she thought she was writing. Let her believe in the ending she'd planned. And when it came, when she finally leaned in for her triumphant farewell, that's when I'd pull the page from under her and watch everything collapse. Not because I wanted her back, because I wanted her aware. Of everything. Of me. Of what it means to make war with someone who has nothing left to lose, and no reason left to forgive. She didn't know I was already home. She walked in humming something upbeat, keys dangling from her fingers, the fake cheerfulness of someone who's already living a separate life. I was sitting in the kitchen, lights dim, just the low hum of the fridge filling the silence. She froze when she saw me, not startled, not guilty, just calculating. Her eyes did that flicker they always did now, scanning for emotional cues she could mirror. "Hey," she said slowly, testing the air. "You're home early." I nodded once. "Sit down." She hesitated, that smile still pinned to her face like a performer waiting for her cue. "Everything okay?" I pointed to the chair across from me. "Sit." This time it wasn't a request. She sat. The camera was already on the table, memory card out, a single audio file open on the laptop. Her voice echoed from the speakers, soft, smug, and surgical. "He's still trying." I almost feel bad. I didn't look at her. I just let it play. Another clip followed. Her laughing. It's like he doesn't realize I've already left. Then the one that stopped even her breath. I want the timing to be poetic. Silence. She shifted in her seat, tried to smile again, but her lips barely moved. "Okay." So, this is going to sound bad if you take it out of context. She reached for the laptop. I closed it before she touched it. Don't insult yourself, I said quietly. You're not that stupid, right? You knew exactly what you were saying, and who you were saying it to. She leaned back, folded her arms, that smug arrogance flickering to life again. So what? You've been spying on me now? Digging through my things like a paranoid child? I looked up, eyes meeting hers for the first time. You recorded yourself. I just listened. She scoffed, like that made it ridiculous. It's not what you think. I was venting, processing. We've been struggling for a while, and I cut her off with a single raise of my hand. Struggling? I said slowly. You mean pretending? You've been sleepwalking through this marriage for months, and now that I've pulled back the curtain, you want to reframe it like you were the victim trying to escape a toxic man. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Just breath. I leaned forward. You weren't unhappy. You were bored. You missed the drama, the chase, the feeling of being someone else. So you turned this house into a stage, and me into a script you could rewrite. Her eyes flickered again. A shift. Her voice softened. I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt trapped, like I couldn't be myself anymore. I nodded, as if considering her words. And who is that, exactly? The real you? The woman who talks about growth and boundaries by day and slips back into her old self the second she's alone? You're not discovering who you are. You're just auditioning. For anyone who'll clap. That one landed. Her face twisted slightly, pain, maybe shame. But it didn't last. She tried a new tactic, leaning into guilt. You never really listened to me, you know that? You always made it about fixing things. About control. Maybe if you had just let me breathe. And I laughed. Quiet, humorless. Control? You think I controlled this? I watched you rewrite the rules every week and still tried to keep us together. I gave you space. I gave you time. I gave you the benefit of the doubt while you rehearsed your exit behind my back. Don't stand there now and pretend this was some mutual drift. You engineered this. Her mouth opened. Closed. I didn't think it would go this far, she whispered. It was supposed to be temporary. I just needed clarity. No, I said, voice cutting through her excuse. You needed a safety net. A version of me to come home to when the fantasy wore off. That's what I was to you. Insurance. The man who'd forgive everything if you just sold it with enough tears. She stood up suddenly, defensive. So what? You want to humiliate me? You want revenge? I stood too, slowly. Calm. Composed. I don't need to humiliate you. You're doing that all by yourself. Every word you speak now peels away another layer of who you really are. I just wanted to see if there was anything left worth respecting. She looked like she might cry. Not from sorrow. From panic. From losing the narrative. Her voice cracked. So what now? You're done? Just like that. I stepped back. I was done the second you said poetic. You wanted a moment? Here it is. And then I sat back down. Said nothing more. Just watched her stand there, shoulders rising and falling, lip trembling, mask shattered. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man in front of her, and for the first time in months, she was right. I wasn't him anymore. I wasn't the fool holding the door open. I was the one locking it behind her. She didn't follow me at first. She stood there, frozen in the kitchen as I walked away, as if the floor had cracked under her and she wasn't sure which direction was safe. But 20 minutes later, she came to find me barefoot, wrapped in that same robe she always wore when she needed to look softer, smaller, forgivable. Her voice was lighter now, too. Careful. Like stepping on glass. Can we talk about this? She asked, as if we hadn't already. As if the truth wasn't still echoing off the walls of this house she turned into a stage. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. That was enough. She flinched. Look, I know I messed up, she started, hands trembling slightly as they clasped together. But you're blowing this out of proportion. People make mistakes. I was confused. I didn't do anything. Not really. I just needed time. I tilted my head slightly, like I was studying a painting I hadn't decided if I wanted to burn or preserve. You recorded yourself mocking me, I said, voice flat. You choreographed my suffering like a scene from a book you thought you'd never have to finish. You weren't confused. You were proud of what you were doing. That's what makes you dangerous. Her mouth opened, shut. She tried again. You act like you're some perfect victim. But you weren't a saint either. You were distant. You were cold sometimes. You never saw me. I nodded slowly, like I was agreeing with her, like I wanted to. You're right. I wasn't perfect. But I didn't lie to you while sleeping next to me. I didn't build a second version of myself behind your back and then laugh about it in voice notes to someone else. You don't get to talk about my flaws while yours were weapons. She stepped closer, eyes flickering with a different tactic now, guilt. I loved you, she whispered. I still do. You pulled away first. I thought I'd lost you and I panicked. I almost smiled, not from humor, but from the twisted irony of her timing. You thought you lost me, so you replaced me while I was still in the room? Her eyes were glassy now, but I wasn't moved. Not this time. You'll never find someone who loved you like I did, she snapped suddenly, the sweetness gone, mask slipping. There it was, the old self, crawling back in. I leaned in just enough for her to hear everything. Good. I don't want someone who loved me like a performance. Like I was an audience to be manipulated into applause. You don't love people. You use them. And when the high wears off, you rewrite history to make it feel justified. She shook her head, backing up now, the desperation starting to show in her posture, in the way she clutched her arms to herself like she was cold for the first time in weeks. You're being cruel. No, I said calmly. This is what clarity sounds like. She started pacing, muttering half-sentences, contradictions dressed up as apologies. I didn't cheat. I just needed attention. You don't understand how lonely I felt. You felt lonely, I repeated. So you created a character to narrate my failures in private. You didn't just check out. You documented it. You turned my trust into a story arc. Her breath hitched. She knew I was right. Knew she'd crossed into a place where sympathy wouldn't follow. But she wasn't done yet. What about the good times? She asked, voice rising. Everything we built, doesn't that count for anything? You're just going to erase me? Like I never mattered? I stared at her, long and still. You mattered. But only because I was willing to believe the version of you I saw. You destroyed that. Now all that's left is someone I don't recognize, and someone I don't owe anything to anymore. She stopped moving. Just stood there in front of me, breathing hard, eyes red, mouth trembling. Around us, the neighbors pretended not to listen. Through the window, over the fence, their curiosity cloaked in silence. But I didn't care. I wanted them to hear. I wanted her to hear herself. She reached for my hand. One last act of a play that had already closed. I didn't pull away. I didn't move at all. I just let her touch skin that no longer felt anything for her. That was when it hit her, not the loss, but the finality. She was gone, but I wasn't following. No tears. No second chances. Just a man watching the ruins and feeling nothing but distance. And then I stepped back. Not far. Just enough. Just enough for her to understand there was no line left between us to pull on. No rope to climb. Just silence. Cold, unflinching silence. And that was the final blow. Because she realized, in that breathless, stinging moment, that the man she thought would always be waiting had walked away long before she noticed the door was even open.